Hello and welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee. Tonight we have returning guest Shane Sedore. But before I introduce him, Raised by Giants is on Rokfin. Go over there, set up a Rokfin account. I release one premium video a week over there, and it is less than a YouTube premium account. And you'll get all of my premium content when it gets released, and all of the other creators' premium content as well, like shows like Forbidden Knowledge News, Beyond Classified, and a whole host of others as well. Check the link in the description to sign up for the video streaming platform Rokfin. Also, check out C60 Purple Power. It is the most powerful antioxidant on the planet. It helps with energy levels, skin problems, infections, eyesight, brain cognition, EMF radiation, and a lot more. It's a free radical sponge that gives your body the ability to heal itself. And if you use promo code GIANTS10 from the link in the description, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. I highly recommend it. Been using it for over a year. So without further ado, introducing tonight's returning guest, Shane Sedore. Shane is a former Illuminati member and is known online as the Ruiner from his blog. He is a speaker, author, singer, and songwriter with knowledge from experience within the mystery schools and secret programs. Using alchemy, he turned his experience into teaching others how to harness and control their own personal power, as well as to tap into the energies of creation. Hello, and welcome back to the show, Shane. Thanks so much for coming back on. I really appreciate you. How are you doing?
All as well, man, and thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm really excited to speak with you because our last show a couple of weeks ago was phenomenal. I was actually up until like 4 in the morning going through all the things that you were saying, because I'd like to get into like details. And whenever you were, saying that, space doesn't work the way that they tell us. And I was like, well, what the freaking freak does that mean? What does he mean by that? And if it doesn't work the way he's saying, they're telling us that it works, then how does it work? And I was like, okay, well, if each planet is like its own quarantine, because you were also talking about how if you were to get to another planet, you'd have to get your energy signature to the frequency of that planet, right? You'd have to adjust your body to the frequency. And that made me think, well, you can't just travel in space to get there. You'd have to, exactly like what you're seeing, dematerialize your physical body, because you can't travel in space. So I guess my first question, we're just kind of jumping into it here because I'm really excited. What is space then? If we can't travel in it, we can't get to another planet through space, then what exactly is going on?
Well, everything's holographic, right? Like everything's basically energy. You can think of it as sound brought down to slow vibrations, as Bill Hicks put it, brought down into different frequencies that assemble as what we call matter or the physical world. The way holographic technology, which I'm sure we'll talk about, works is no different. It's generated kind of from the inside out and projected, so to speak. And this one's controlled by consciousness. So what the universe would actually technically look like would be almost something like, a branch with a bunch of different nodes on it that's kind of breathing, like kind of doing this, right? So there's a bit of a breath to it. But the space in between it isn't like the outer space vacuum that we're taught. It's just like a void, like an emptiness. And so to travel between planet to planet, you actually do have to, portal between each one, right? You don't like actually physically, like here's planet A, here's planet B, and we're going to travel from that one to that one. That doesn't really work, as NASA repeatedly proves to us. It's, you've basically got what we call a portal, or Stargate is another way of referring to it. That's how the military would refer to it. Actually, a lot of their programs had the Stargate concept into it, which is basically a dimensional, like a dimensional wormhole, where you're traveling from one hologram to another. And within certain areas, like certain galaxies, as an example, hold like a kind of baseline frequency, so it's kind of easy to travel between planet to planet. But then when you go into other galaxies, it gets a little bit more complicated. Different areas of the universe hold a certain set of uniformity, so it's not as complicated. But then if you were to go to the other side of the universe, it would be very, very different. So a lot of the travel that does happen is pretty localized for that reason. and for the other reason that it's a very big universe. So I don't really know how to answer in terms of like what it physically is other than empty space, right? Like it's the way we perceive it when we look outside of this hologram. It's a bunch of data that's been, translated back to us. And so we see like the gap between us and say Mars as space, and there's a distance to be traveled there, but they're close enough to Earth's frequency that you could theoretically portal from, Earth to Mars without too much of a calibration. But as soon as you've stepped outside of the solar system, you need a bigger, more sophisticated calibration. So therefore, the idea of like having, spaceships out in space, like fighting each other and doing all of this stuff doesn't even really make sense. It would make sense if it happened like within a planetary atmosphere or within one realm's hologram, one planet's hologram. But to do it outside of that, there's no logical reason for it. So yeah, I don't know how well that answers the question, but that's the best I've got at explaining what space actually is. It's just, our perception of a gap between us and the next hologram.
Yeah, after the show, because you were talking about how, we're really programmed with the word space. Whenever we think of space, we automatically think of outer space, when space can be anything. Space can be in our heads, space can be the ocean, space could be the water. And then, it's funny how we don't really ever call it outer space. We just say space, and then people automatically think that people are talking about outer space, right? Whenever NASA says stuff, they're always like space, and that makes people think that they're talking about outer space when there's so many different more spaces that they could actually be referring to. And that really got me thinking, what if, space is the ocean, right? Because you were talking about how they're always launching, rockets into the ocean and stuff. So, what if the water is some kind of memory and it's our memory, and whenever they pollute the water, they're also polluting our memory to a degree. And then in the Bible, it talks about which, the Bible is just a conglomeration of a bunch of different, religions and stuff. But it says in the book of Genesis that God separated the waters from below from the waters above. So technically, space could be water. Space could be the ocean.
It's a better way of thinking of it is water. Like if you're going to conceptualize it as something physical, then water would be the better way to do it. And that's also the way our craft work. It's why they can go in and between the air and the water, no different. It's the same. Yeah, it's not a substance, I think, which is the hard thing for us to grasp. It is literally like a void of emptiness, right? Like, and that's kind of the difference. So there's something. The hologram generates from within. So the closer to the center of us you go, the closer to the portal to get out you actually go. And so they've got us looking in the wrong direction. And in terms of the language behind it, it used to be outer space a lot before, the 80s and late 80s, early 90s, when, this new version of space and, that came out, which was a very big distraction, obviously, from what we physically did have, like say what was going on in say NASA and their lack of going to outer space anymore, right? Like they kind of gave up on the whole concept and started focusing on other things. And people don't realize that most of the technology that we have in our homes actually does originate from NASA, right? So that's their actual function, is to roll out various technologies, which again plays into what I'm saying about the programming, right? Changing the languaging from outer space to just space again allowed them to hide things and do things like call a variety of programs secret space programs that then get also referred to as these secret outer space programs, right? So it's just it's in the story of the Tower of Babel. Like language is a big deal, especially when you start confusing words, right? Like when we have English, where one word can mean a bunch of different things, and there's different interpretations of language depending on where you live in the world, even, right? Even though we're all speaking, or anyone who's speaking English, there's different ways of interpreting English depending on where you've learned it. So That's a big complication, and they use it against us. That's spellcraft, right? Like that's actually a form of magic, neurolinguistic programming, right? It's all mind control techniques.
I had a thought about the Tower of Babel is what if, which is just completely speculation in my own thoughts, but what if the Tower of Babel was some kind of technology, right? And everybody on the planet was kind of realized that we were living in some sort of holographic simulation and they wanted to get out and they were trying to build this device to kind of bust them out of this holographic simulation. And then the AI god or whatever that's kind of in control of this reality, which is what I think source is. I think the source is the source of the simulation, and it kind of controls everything and duplicates things based on our perception of it. So whatever we believe in, it just continuously perpetuates it, right? So if you see like a random creature like no one had ever seen before, and then you go tell 20, 30, 40 people, and then those 40 people go tell other people, and it starts this loop, and then pretty soon everyone starts seeing that creature. It's just constantly perpetuating whatever it is that you see. But then something came in and was like, nah, we can't let them escape this holographic simulation that they're in, because if they do, then they will become like us. And that's another kind of quote from the Bible that I'm kind of trying to put all the pieces together.
There's other representations of that, like say ayahuasca, right? Like there's like a certain entity that people claim to get in touch with ayahuasca that has been recently Americanized. Pretty funny. She originated in places where everyone was black and brown, but yet now she's a white lady, right? So it's that is how we change things like that over time. But it's not to
Yeah.
say that there's not an entity there. It's just to talk about like how our perceptions shape what we see when we're doing this, right? So yeah, and I guess even language in what I'm saying, because what I'm saying like pretty publicly actually kind of got taken the wrong way by some people. I'm not saying that there's no aliens, and I'm not saying that there's no, travel between planets, and I'm not saying that those things have not interacted with our planet at times. I'm just saying that that fictional version of the secret space program, a la the Corey Goods and the like, is a deliberate fiction, right? It's to make us looking out there all the time instead of looking, down here at what's actually going on. And that's the problem. And in terms of like, there's maybe two sides to it. If you think of like Joseph P. Farrell and the secret space program he talks about, which is basically humans reverse engineering technology at the military level of spacecraft that they've found, things that they've recovered, things that have crashed here, accidents that have happened, things like that, as well as maybe a little bit of trickle down technology from higher levels above the military, right? But they've never had like this idea of like space fleets and like and things. There's so many conversations to be had within that concept that just make it ridiculous. And when people are trying to argue with me, they're kind of defeating their own logic by saying what they're doing. Like even the 20 and back program makes no sense when they're willing to blow up astronauts on live TV. You're not that important to them. You're expendable. And then the argument to that would be like clone bodies. And I'm like, well, then that makes it even more expendable. So your argument's actually negating it. And the thing about clones, people, is like whatever you're learning when you're in a clone, I mean, this brain has to learn it, right? Like you have to learn it, so it's a transferable skill, right? Did you not watch The Matrix? When he got his downloads, you could then do those things, right?
Yeah.
So like if you can't do those things, then you probably never could actually do those things. But it's very easy to program you or those type of abilities in a simulation now, isn't it? Right? Like everyone's had dreams where they can fucking fly. So what's the difference? Right? So yeah, and then even with the secret space or the super soldier programs that involved with it, that was very like old. Like the only person I've ever seen that I ever was like, well, first of all, I know that he was involved, but was ever like, yeah, this guy's telling the true story, is Duncan O'Finian. And that was a long time ago now. It's going back to like 2006 when he did his disclosure, right? And everything that's kind of spiraled off from that has just been like I said, more fantastical versions of a story that was true, right? And so again, bring it back to like the Bob Lazar story of his involvement at Area 51. That's the extent of the secret space program. The military, the Nazi testing that was going on, like the Bell experiment and all of that. That's the extent of the secret space program in terms of like the secret space program that would be parallel to NASA. But quite clearly, right, as they develop these technologies, they do release them to the public. And so we can see how there's kind of like a not much of a differential between, Bob Lazar's version or Joseph P. Ferrero's version or the Nazi version of a secret space program and what NASA has shown us, right? But there's also like a kind of plateau to that where clearly we haven't gone beyond that. Whereas with all this other holographic technology and implanting memory technology and reading people's dreams technology, which is no different than reading their minds. I mean, the algorithms in our phone, how many times have you thought about things and there's an ad for it, right? Clearly, they're already there with that technology. It's not a debate anymore. It's in the public. Whereas all of that other stuff, which, if you're a controller, all of that other stuff is some of the best control systems you could have, and you would be using them, right? Quite clearly. If you wanted to get off the planet, you would get off the planet. But like, how many times, like the Eisenhower last name, how many times does he get related to the secret space program? People, where did he die? Did he ever get off the planet? Don't you think that if this was this highly elaborate secret space program and he was a big part of it, that he would have got the fuck out of here? But he didn't. So there you go, proof in the result. So yeah, it's just the logic behind it starts to unravel it when you actually do go through it. But if you go through it in the opposite direction, where yes, we have like more advanced technology than we're disclosing to the public when it comes to moving around our own planet and moving around planets, but that's clearly not taking us up into outer space, is it? Right?
Absolutely not. I've actually had Dr. Joseph Farrell on my show and Walter Bosley, which Walter Bosley talks about the Sonora Aerospace Club in the mid 1800s. James Dalshaw and Peter Minnis. There's all kinds of schematics and drawings of the aircraft that they were developing, which was spinning mercury engines that gave them basically endless flight. So we've had this technology for a really long time. And I'm just going to, come out and say, you say that you're not saying that ETs don't exist. I'm saying that they don't exist because I really don't think that they do. I don't think any extraterrestrial is on our planet in a physical body. Yeah, they might be somewhere else, but the contact experience is a spiritual and consciousness experience. I do believe that they're experiencing something, but anything physical, any physical craft, any physical being is created by us. I think anyway. I personally think that any physical ET that anybody has ever seen that you can actually reach out and touch is either indigenous to this planet or was created on this planet. And any physical UFO that you see in the sky is also us. Right? And I think that the UFO phenomenon and the alien phenomenon is completely separate. Right? I don't think that any extraterrestrial or alien civilization will be flying here in tin can craft. Just not happening, not possible to me anyway. That's just from my personal thoughts and ideas, and we didn't really get to talk too much about ETs or aliens last time, so this is a perfect spot to kind of get your thoughts on the ET and the alien phenomenon.
Well, yeah, there's a process. Like when I'm talking about that calibration, it's almost like a genetic process that has to happen too. And when I was talking about like there being a kind of baseline between like say solar systems or parts of the galaxy, and that making it an easier transition, there's still a transition there. So when you were talking about them either being indigenous to here or having already been here, being here longer than us, that's mostly the case. Like the travel between here and other planets is incredibly rare. It only kind of happens if it really needs to. Whereas, yeah, we have species that are non-human that have existed on this planet forever, right? Like longer than we have. We have different variants of human that still exist on this planet. And a lot of that technology, a lot of these UFOs that we're seeing are theirs, right? Like it's their stuff. It's technology we have had and will have again. I mean, the military does have highly advanced drones, and I think that's a lot of what the Pentagon is showing us right now, right? And we see being deployed over Ukraine, just like what happened in World War II with the Foo Fighters, right? So just repeats psyops. That's what that is. There was another direction I meant to go there that I kind of lost, but oh yeah, the contact experience. I try to explain this to people a lot. Like we all have connections to other planets because we've incarnated on other planets. So we have memories that are attached to incarnations in completely different holograms, right? Some of that data doesn't compute with here. We have a kind of a limited ability to perceive like colors and shapes and things like that on Earth, right? Like I teach a magic class and I often bring up this thing that our imagination is limited to her. And the example of that is try to imagine a color you've never seen before, right? You can't really do
Yeah.
that. So we're presented all of that from this planet, and that's true from planet to planet, right? So if you're perceiving something, like even if you're, astral projecting to another planet, whatever you're perceiving through a filter that's designed for here. And so it's going to translate everything back into the best representation it can for here, right? And they're kind of been showing you that a little bit in the mainstream too, when they start showing aliens that don't have an anthropomorphic form all of a sudden, right? Like say in the movie Arrival, they were kind of pushing that. I know Lex Friedman has been talking about this with his guests a lot, about how we wouldn't recognize a lot of these ET species if we saw them, because we're looking for something that looks like us. And that's why a lot of the time when we're having contact, we see something that looks like us. They could either present themselves in that kind of figure to us, or we are just interpreting it in that way. Either way, most of these, again, are happening with the space in here, right? So we're getting contact, we're tapping into a data stream, and it's being translated through these brains, and we're having these visions, experiences, contact. It's still a type of contact. It's just not the like an alien showed up at your house and came in and sat on your living room, sofa or whatever type of contact. It's a different type of thing, and that doesn't delegitimize, doesn't make it any less real or make it any less valuable, but it does change the perceptions of it enough that it explains away a lot of the other nonsense, right? And it also makes a lot more make sense, like where religions come from and all of that, and why your experiences are different than mine and everything else. And you hear those variations in these contact experiences, and people question their own experiences because it doesn't sound like the ones that get blown up to the mainstream, right? So that's it. All more evidence to what you're saying is more true than not, that the majority of contact experience is something that's happening for you, directly to you, from something outside of here, yes, but it's being interpreted in a way that you can understand it here. And yeah, that it comes from our soul connections, because like I said, we're just playing a game here, right? This is just a one video game console that we can tap into and play, and then there's a bunch of other ones out there.
Yeah, and then whenever people see something unexplainable in the sky, this is how I think the UFO phenomenon has gotten connected to the alien and extraterrestrial phenomenon, right? Because they don't have the perception that anything that we see in the sky isn't extraterrestrial. It's us. It's stuff that we've created. So they automatically link it to an extraterrestrial race, right? And that's what's created all of this conglomeration of nonsense connecting them whenever they're two very separate things, right? The being contacted by an alien race or an alien species or extraterrestrial, whatever you want to call it, is done spiritually and consciously, right? They're not coming here on tin can craft, right? It doesn't even make any logical sense, right? And then like Dr. Joseph Farrell talking about his speculation that the crashed craft in Roswell was German technology, which makes a lot of sense because all these events start happening after World War II, right? You got when was the Roswell incident? 1947. 1947 was the Roswell incident. And then 1962 was the Washington Flap incident, which with the craft flying over the White House, which there was a shoot down order for. So whenever someone's is giving a shoot down order for something, they know that it's not extraterrestrial. Why would they risk going to war with an off planet species? So they knew that it was that it was some kind of human technology. And then you have the Kecksburg event, which was 1967, 2 years before we went to the moon. So all these, and then the abductions phenomenon starts happening right after World War II. So it only makes sense that none of this stuff was happening before World War II, right? And it's happening after World War II. So you think that they all of a sudden just decided to come from other planets right after World War II and do all this crazy? No, it's us.
We have other representations of the same type of programming through religions, angels and demons, right? Like it's just, if you roll it back 1,000 years, it's just angels and demons. A good representation of that is like sleep paralysis used to be perceived along with the old hag, because that's what the church would call it, right? And now it's aliens, right? Or cloning centers, or fill in the blank, right? It's the same phenomenon, sleep paralysis. Right? So it's just that our interpretation of that event and those associations now don't have these biblical based imagery or images to and idols to draw our imagination from. We have these sci-fi based images to draw that imagination from, or that interpretation from, or the compartmentalization of all that data from, right? So, yeah.
What do you think of Donald Marshall's story of the cloning? Have you heard of Donald Marshall? He came out like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. He doesn't do anything anymore, but he was talking about the cloning. And but again, he was talking about it all kind of being in like a dream state, like dream reality thing. Like you can say whatever you want. You can be the ruiner for a minute. Shane, go back to the ruiner.
Well, there's two factors to that. I guess like just to say, like around the time I wrote the blog, Donald had actually reached out to me and invited me to his Facebook group. And when I joined, he like kind of made a celebration about it. And then someone showed him my avians blog, and he flipped out because the blue avians are real, man. They fuck with me every night. And that was that. So my basic opinion on it is that he probably has experienced something, and then he's done what is too easy to do, which is just put himself at the center of it all, right? And then conflate the story out from there, where, you know, I've written every song from the 90s, I've done all these different things, you know. But the truth within what he's saying is that there are cloning facilities, like facilities where they clone bodies, and you can move your consciousness out of your physical body into that clone body and very clumsily do things. But a lot of what it's used for is also in line with what he was talking about, is like, you know, being able to go through torture without feeling the pain, or, you know, rock climb and accidentally fall without worrying about actually dying, things like that. And then would also be used to, you know, torment people, right? Like basically psychologically torture people, because you move their consciousness into the clone body, you torture the clone body, they go back to their own body feeling as if they've had all of those experiences. But one of the benefits and one of the main uses of clones is that they can turn off things like pain receptors, right? And they can turn off things like, you know, feeling certain emotions. So they're more used for entertainment than anything practical. And yeah, so that's kind of the truth within what he was saying. And then it gets blown up into people start having dreams about that and seem to think that's what's happening, is they're taking your consciousness from your sleeping body in your bed and moving you into this clone so that they can torment you. And once again, that I don't know why anyone thinks that they're that important, right? Like out of one side of their face, they're saying that, and out of the other side of their face, they're saying, and these people want to depopulate. Why didn't they just start with you? Right? Like, I'm sorry, but there's no, you can't, it's a, what do they call that? It's like, it's negating, right? Like you can't have one ideology that, you know, we just spent billions of dollars negating. Like that doesn't make any logical sense, right? So yeah, it's once again some truth that gets mixed in with storytelling on the internet and yeah, ego, maybe a bunch of alcohol. Sorry, Donald. Love you, man.
Well, speaking of psychological experiment, I have a really awesome article that I just found that I want to share with you. And I find this really interesting and it really confirms a lot of what you're saying. So, this is an article that I found today, which is a Vice article. It says that this woman spent a year on Mars as a psychological experiment. Here she is. Environmental scientist Kamel Johnston has returned home from Montana after a year living on Mars, while a replica of the red planet built on the side of a Hawaiian volcano. It's called the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation. And the idea is to operate long term duration planetary surface missions to investigate crew composition as a sort of psychological experiment for NASA. This was mind blowing when I read it because I immediately thought of you, and it came into my feed right before we were getting ready to do this interview, and I was like, damn. Need to get Shane's thoughts on this. Johnston, the team's commander, was in charge of 6 engineers, psychiatrists, aerobiologists, and architects living in total isolation with their every move scrutinized. The crew provided data on team dynamics and resilience from a high stress confines of their tiny habitat, a dome about 1,200 square feet. Here's some pictures of it too. This is what they were living in, which is like a simulation replica of Mars for a year with 12 people. It's crazy.
Yeah, just drop that whole experiment at the bottom of the ocean, and away you go, right?
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
easy, right? Like that's again proof in the result, and that's what I keep saying is they told us themselves, and I've told you because I was a member of them when I told you that they're going to tell you it, they're going to put all this stuff out. You're going to get your disclosure. The unfortunate thing is your disclosure wasn't the pretty space aliens story you wanted. The disclosure was it's all right here and it's been right under your face and you're a big part of it. And yeah, and so we are getting it all. Like, you know, all the technology is coming out, right? Every day I see a new piece of it. Every day I see an article like that where they're talking about running psychological experiments on people. You know, I've talked about like what DHS training looks like. It looks like what we call false flag events, right? Where they just stage an area of a city or a stage an area of a town or stage the area of a, you know, a train platform to look like it's operational. And then they have people running around. And to the naked eye, it wouldn't appear as anything other than just a regular old train platform. But it's not, right? So couple that with hypnosis, couple that with suggestions, couple that with putting you in and out of consciousness. They can convince you you're in some pretty cool places. They can convince you you're doing some pretty cool things very easily based on technology we have available to us right now.
Yeah, which is, I forgot to share this other article too. Let me pull this one up too, because this one's another confirmation as well. Scientists create holograms that you can touch. They created a basketball project that can be touched, rolled, and bounced. Researchers have developed a hologram that allows you to reach out and feel it, not unlike the holodecks of Star Trek. University of Glasgow scientists have created a hologram system that uses jet air known as aero haptics to replicate the sensation of touch. A researcher who has worked on the project said that the air jets can allow you to feel people's fingers, hands, wrists. The team published their paper on their findings in advanced intelligent systems. So you're right on the money here. And I found this one after our first interview, and then it was just confirmation again that these holograms exist and they've been using it because they're not going to roll anything out to the public unless they know exactly how it works and that they've tested it many times. You know, that's what people don't realize. They don't declassify anything. They don't roll anything out until they got it under control. and they know exactly what they're doing.
I saw it was on Big Bang Theory, like from one of their earlier seasons where I guess the character Leonard was showing this hologram and like his ability to manipulate it and move it and whatnot, like right there on like captured by a camera on live TV. It wasn't put in later by CGI. It was the actual thing. And that was probably like close to 10 years ago now. And if you think about like they're probably at least 14 years ahead of anything that we have right now, right? Like at least. And so just roll that technology 14 years into the future based on the escalation of technology we know right now, which is actually accelerating, in case anyone forgot to notice, it's actually getting faster. And you have exactly what I'm saying. And it's funny because going back to like, again, the 2006, 2009 ballpark, there was some whistleblowers at the time coming out talking about a jump room to Mars, and a lot of the programs I was hearing about sounded very similar, where they would like walk into a room and then they would be on Mars or they would be, you know, somewhere else, right? And they were calling them jump rooms, and I was saying they're not jump rooms, they're holodecks. You're walking onto a holodeck. It's this, right? Yeah, but there you go. It took 10 years, but it's here. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
comes out
it,
of it.
yeah, it's really wild because
If I'm
you were.
wrong, if I'm wrong about the secret space program, I'm going to be proven wrong, right? But I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be a lot grayer and still having this conversation with people as we're being put into the matrix and they're still telling me that space aliens are coming to save the day. You know, I'm pretty sure it's that deeply ingrained in these people, like as a religious thing. It's funny because I watch it like when people won't even have a conversation with me at this time. They just have a fucking meltdown on me. And they start calling me names and like projecting all of this nasty behavior they're in the middle of doing onto me while they're doing it instead of just having a conversation with me. And all I'm going to do in a conversation, like my tone's going to be no different than it is with you and here and now. And I'm just going to be asking you logical questions like, does this make any sense? Like what you're saying on one side is this, and what you're saying on the other side is that. Connect the dots for me. I'll be quiet while you do. Right? That's it.
Yeah, that's what I really, had to do because I was really interested in it whenever I think the first person that I heard talk about it was, I think it was Max Spears, but he didn't really talk too much about being a part of any secret space program. He was into all kinds of other different things. But I was in like 2013, 2014 or something like that. And then it sparked my interest and I started looking into, all these other people and more that is developed. I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. It's not making any kind of sense that these people can be taken at 6 years old, put through, all of these programs, which like I was talking about the last time, the MK Ultra stuff is real. A lot of that stuff is definitely real. Now, if it's exactly the way that they're describing it in the declassified records, probably not. It's probably not. It's probably way different. They're only giving you the shitty stuff. But there are real psychological manipulation programs, and it just did not make any sense that these people could be taken at really young age, do this psychological stuff on them, which I think is the part that's actually real, and then be shipped off to space to fight a bunch of aliens in crazy craft and whip around and then be regenerated, and then after 20 years they're magically time traveled back to when they were taken in the exact same spot. It just doesn't make any logical common sense, and there had to be something more to it, but I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then recently, when I heard you talk about this simulation and this hologram technology that they're using, it all kind of comes together, and you can just kind of connect the dots. But it shatters people's reality about it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem, because they've been so locked into believing that it's absolutely 100% real, and they can't let go of it, because if they do, then that means that it it never really happened, which it technically kind of happened, but it really didn't happen.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, they develop their identity around it. Some of them have their businesses wrapped around it, right? So there's that. I was recently sent an article by someone who has heard me repeat this type of thing many times. But one of the major proponents of the Galactic Federation of Light calling bullshit on all of everything he had said. I didn't read it all. I just kind of glanced through it, but yeah, he was basically saying the same thing. As he's like, I'm pretty sure this is probably something that's being beamed into my head at best, if I'm not just imagining it, because I've read about it all day long and all my friends talk about it. And we get together and we have these meditation sessions on these crazy concepts. I don't mean to call them crazy. I'm exaggerating on purpose, on these concepts and ideas that then follow me into my dreams, that then follow me into my daydreams, that then follow me into my imagination, right? Which, I then become my reality. And I tie myself up in that reality. It's like anything else. I mean, if you were like, I'm in a band and the band breaks up, it feels the same. It feels the same. Obviously, maybe a little bit different because you're still the musician. And that's the difference, right? Is like, where's the character development that came through all these programs for these people? Right? Like if you're having a meltdown on me on Facebook over something I said in an interview with Ryder, then I don't think I would trust you with a space fleet. I'm sorry, I just wouldn't, like I couldn't. I don't think I would trust you with my laundry because you might, get really upset on the way and decide to throw my laundry on the pavement. Like that's the kind of character you're showing me, and that doesn't jive with the type of experiences you're telling me that you have had, right? Like you don't exhibit the signs of someone who has had, 20 years of extra life. Like
Then not only that, how are all these people so important? That's what I really want to know. How are they all captains of the ships and doing all this stuff, right? If
all
there's
got
a
right, yeah.
if they're all if it's that big of an operation, there's different components, right? Like you would have to have a janitor, you would have to have a repairman, you would have to have all the a communications person. Like if all this stuff is really happening, how can they all be almost identical, all be the exact same thing? The only explanation to me is that it was a holographic kind of simulation, and they were all kind of in the same role, doing the exact same thing.
It's funny because when I talk about the intended audience from my blog, the people I originally was writing for, one of them literally was a cleaning person in one of the facilities who ended up having to have his like memory of his time spent there kind of erased and then put back into the world. But he didn't like he was a cleaning person, you know what I mean? So it's like it is kind of funny because those things do exist. Those necessities did have to be looked after, and people were involved with those too. But again, we're pretty expendable, right? Like we're pretty expendable. They don't like killing us, but they don't not like killing us. And I yeah, and killing me would have been nicer. Let's put it that way. There's a certain point where they could have just killed me instead of letting me go, and I think that like in hindsight, that would have been the kinder way to go. So there's that as well, which is what I'm not hearing from a lot of these people as well. I even hesitate to talk about it. I don't talk about it because I went through it. So it's not as easy as just, sitting around chatting with people on the internet about these are, do you want to tell me about the time you got beat up in public school? Probably not, right? That's not, nobody likes those humiliated moments. Nobody likes those shameful moments. Nobody wants to talk about that. And these people kind of just glance over it like, but I got to fly a spaceship, so it was okay,
Yeah. But it also, brings a realness to your story as well. I think that those things are very important to talk about as well, because it brings a sense of realness, that you're a real person, that you're just not somebody here on the internet talking about random stuff. It actually gives you a personality and shows people that you're a real individual, because it's easy to look at someone on the internet and disassociate with them, and make them out to be like not so much of a real person. So I think that those kinds of stories are also important to talk about. And a lot of people do just glance kind of glance over them and go for the more dramatic and crazy space stuff, and they want to talk about the wild and extraordinary things that are going on, and they want to bring it to a real and personal level. And the people that do that, I think are way more credible, right? Because it's bringing a human level and a human aspect to their whole story.
Well, I think there's a difference between being taken from your bed while you're sleeping and being locked in a cage in between these things, right? Like I would spend time, at the mystery school, and then you get locked in a room until it's time to spend time doing that. If you're in a program, you do whatever your thing is during whatever the fucking hours they have you doing it is, and then they lock you in something, right? And there's a bunch of like really nasty things that they do to you along the way to make sure that you do what they say to do. It's yeah, and that's the part, like, because there are people in the community listening to this stuff mostly that have experienced it too, right? And so it is a massive spit in the face to those people that all of that is being kind of overlooked. And a lot of the time when, yeah, you just always see the truth in what people are saying, I think. And the same is true with me. But, part of why I make myself accessible to anybody who wants to talk to me, like even if it's just someone who's having a meltdown on me on the internet, or it's, someone doing a podcast, is because I'm the same person on both sides of a camera, right? So this person is just who I am. And that'll be very, obvious to anyone who wants to check it out. I don't know if you know who C.W. Chanter is, but he was, go back all the way back to where my blog was in my first interview with Carrie Cassidy. He spent like 6 videos just ripping me to shreds. And my reaction to that was to contact him and be like, let's have a conversation. We had a 3-hour phone conversation followed by a 3-hour podcast in which he just stood there and called bullshit on everything that I said. But I don't react to that because I know it's not bullshit. Right? So I have conviction in it. So it doesn't matter. You can call me a liar all you want. I know I'm not lying. So it doesn't bother me. Right?
Yeah.
If I was lying, then I would have a real hissy fit trying to prove myself right to you. Right? But if I know that I can't prove it to you, but I'm not lying, then I don't need to throw that hissy fit. Right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
people don't look at that either. They think that you constantly have to be defending yourself and coming back with some kind of rebuttals. I'm the exact same way, and I pride myself on the things that I say and the people that I bring on. Like I really, dig into that. And and of course, if I'm wrong about something, then I'll come on and say that I'm wrong about it. But I'm not going to fight somebody about it and try and prove myself to them. That's the opposite of what you should be doing. And if your information, if you think that your information is real and that you're not lying at all, then that should be your reaction. You shouldn't worry about it. Who cares? You said what you needed to say, and if people liked it, then they liked it. If they didn't, then they didn't. That's the real genuality of the situation, but we've gotten it backwards. We've flipped that in our society that we've created, and that's started a bunch of just in everyday reality has created this dog eat dog kind of world that we live in, and this I'm better than you type of scenario. And that's not the way that it be. Your success is my success, right? My success is your success. I'm going to try and build everybody up the best that I can, and shout people out that I think that are doing really good work. But people always want to try and be ahead all the time, right? And that's, to me, that's not the way to actually get ahead. You want to help people out and build people up, right? I'll go on anyone's show too. Like anybody that reaches out to me, I don't care how many listeners or subscribers you got. It doesn't matter to me. Like I'm going to go on your show because you took the time to actually ask me to come on your show. You reached out to me, right? So
Yeah. And yeah, just like going back to, I said it right from the very beginning that, yeah, that I can't provide proof of my experiences, and you probably shouldn't just believe me, right? But over time, I would prove through character and through proof in the result that what I was saying was accurate. And, that was 10 years ago. So it's been, so far, like I said, my batting average is perfect. Everything has been happening exactly like I said it would. If you read the plan from my blog right now, it looks like the World Economic Forum. You will hear Klaus Schwab speaking in your head as you read it, because I knew it was coming, because I experienced it, because the things that I said, the overview that I had, the grooming that I had, I'm not lying to you. And, titles. What title did I give myself? The Ruiner, right? Fucking Lord Commander of the satanic death cults, and surviving member of the Bastards of Darkness, and there's so many different ways I could have gone with it, but I chose the Ruiner.
No, I really like the Ruiner because it people normally only want to hear what they believe coming out of their own mouth, right? They don't want to hear any kind of truth. They say that they want to hear truth, but whenever someone actually comes on and says the truth, they don't want to believe it, or they get mad and they get angry because deep down they know that they're wrong and they don't want to be wrong about it. I like to give everyone the opportunity to kind of believe what they want. Like I'll bring on really anybody onto my show, right? I'm trying to stay away from the secret space program and super soldier people because I've realized what it is, and I don't want to bring on people like that too much anymore. Probably the only one I probably bring on is maybe like Penny Bradley. I've had her on like 3 or 4 times. Had her on recently actually, but you know letting people create their own thoughts and ideas based on the information that they have is very important in the critical thinking aspect. Just like the last time, we didn't expand on a lot of this stuff, right? But I expanded on it on my own and then created my own ideas and thoughts out of what you're saying. And then we're kind of, talking about it right now. And that's what more people really need to do, and read between the lines and listen to everything that someone's saying, right? Just don't take the big things. Take something small that's interesting and then expand on it on your own, and create your own theories and your own thoughts, your ideas. It's exactly what I did with you. You said space doesn't work the way that we've been led to believe that space works, and I'm like, okay, well, how does it work then? Then I'm trying to run through my brain of like how it works, and more people really need to be doing that. But I do have some questions here from the audience on the last video that I wanted to run past you really quick, because I think that some of these are really good. A comment on the last video that we did wants to know some examples of the magic that you teach and how we're supposed to keep afloat, so to speak, within the simulation that we're in.
I'm not sure I understand what they want me to say for examples. The magic that I teach comes from similar to what Bruce Lee did with Jeet Kune Do, where I learned a bunch of different martial arts, magic arts, and basically took out of it what actually works and what doesn't, by understanding why it works and how it works, and then just making it super simple so that anyone can learn it, so that anyone can develop a relationship with it. That's why I equate it to what Bruce Lee did with Jeet Kune Do ultimately led to the UFC and mixed martial arts in general, right? So same type of thing as I teach you kind of a foundation that you can develop upon to become a magician. So that's it. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
How to keep afloat within this simulation. I guess like how to navigate the simulation, realizing that we're in a simulation. Maybe how does magic work within this simulation? Is it exactly the way that we've been led to believe? Is it like spells? Is it more of a manifestation thing, or like how did you have to do a ritual to do magic, or are we creating magic every day? Because I think that anything can be ritualized, right? You wake up in the morning, you have a ritual. You go make breakfast, you eat food, right? You get up out of your bed, that's considered a ritual. You do the same thing every day. You drive to work, that's a ritual. You take the same route home, it's a ritual, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's ritual is a way to order your life. It's a way to impose your own habits and behaviors instead of having them imposed upon you. It's a way to control outcomes of things. That's why it's used by them against us, is because it's effective. I'm getting a little confused when she's saying simulation, because I I do believe that we're in actually a replay of something which is a type of simulation, but the organic timeline is always a type of simulation as well. It's holographic, right? So technically it's a type of simulation. So I'm going to approach it like that. I'm going to just approach it from that. And any type of simulator would simulate nature, and pretty much everything in nature shows us magic, right? So everything we've duplicated with technology, all of the different rituals and things that we've developed actually are ways of mimicking nature's natural processes in such a way that we're kind of, I hate to use the word in control of, but that we are directing, right? So basically what magic is moving energy around, if you want to get right down to it, right? If you're talking about psychic abilities, if you're talking about telekinesis, if you're talking about manifesting a fireball, you're talking about moving energy around. That's what it is. So if you're not organic hologram, the organic simulation, if that's what you want to call it, then that's part of the framework of the hologram, is our ability to do that, right? It's how we manipulate the hologram. There's limits from planet to planet based on a kind of collective consciousness level decision, but that's what it is. And then if you're talking about us actually being in like the machine-based simulation, as I speak about, the reason why magic would still work despite being in a simulation is because the simulation needs to mimic all of those aspects of nature, including the things that make magic work, which is a combination of imagination, will, and conviction. But basically it's the conviction that makes it real. It's the, actually acting like we believe what we say we believe, right? Yeah. So I think that's the best answer I can give her.
So if we were to concentrate, if everyone on the planet concentrated on one thing with our consciousness, right? Let's say that everyone decided one day to concentrate on uh, ending world hunger. Could we do that within the simulation?
Sure. If we got everybody on board, why not? Right. The simulation, as I speak about it, is a replica, right? If you imagine like a period of time has been recorded and it's looping back to us, and there's a bunch of smaller AI systems that make sure that things like the astral realm exists, demons exist, angels exist, ATs exist, all these different things still exist within the recording because they existed within what it recorded. But if we're looking at just what it recorded, the organic, then that is simply how the hologram is all built, is magic, right? Like everything in nature is a form of magic. All that alchemy, all that transmutation, all of that is magic. Like the expression that the world is mystical, we've just forgot how to see it, or like the world is magic and we've just forgot that. But that's it. If you want to boil it down to it, it's getting ourselves back in tune with nature, right?
Got another question here from Natas. They said they were a bit frustrated by the unanswered question about who left and why the extraterrestrial overlords that was in charge of the holographic simulation that was here, and they left. And I believe that was the reptilians, correct? But they want to know where the Anunnaki fit into this as well. So, first part of the question: why did the extraterrestrials that created this simulation that we're in right now leave? And then where do the Anunnaki fit into the equation?
They left because their experiment ended. They got what they wanted and they left. They were trying to figure something out. They figured it out, and so they left. That's the easiest way to say it. And so Anunnaki is a word that means, things that came from the sky, right? And we've kind of conflated that into somehow being a species or a race, which it's not. Um, we have images that make it all look like it was like maybe one species, but it's actually talking about a period of time where there was a bunch of different species introduced to this planet that to us appeared as gods or aliens. And that the answer is the same. The Draco reptilians are what we called the Anunnaki. They just didn't allow us to draw or paint or carve them as reptilians. They made us do that as giant humans. And then time went by and telephone got played and the occult happened, and now we call the Anunnaki a species and refer to them as if they're a race. But that's just yeah, that's just not making logical sense of the language, which is again just people, beings that came from the sky.
So was it the Draconians that was in
The
charge
story,
of the simulation, though? They were the ones that created the simulation, and they kind of. What about Earth-based reptilians? Where do they come in? Are they still here?
yes. And again, I don't know what you mean when you're saying simulation, but the people in control of the hologram or control of the
Hologram,
planet,
yeah.
let's just put it that way for context here, and that was all the Draco. So the story behind the Anunnaki, or the story that we attach to the word Anunnaki, is actually the story of what the Draco have done, where they genetically manipulated us and have used us for their own experimentation over this time, kind of claimed ownership of the planet. They gave that up about 200 years ago, and we've been watching a reset play out ever since. That is meant to basically give them time to leave and the humans time to take back control of their own planet. In our case, those humans are what we used to call the Illuminati, which I now call the umbrella corporations. But yeah, that's why and how it happened.
It definitely does seem like there was an old control structure, and then they kind of there's becoming a new one, where the new one is already in charge. Is that
Well, funny that I said it. I started calling them Umbrella Corporation, which obviously I took from Resident Evil, but that's because when they break it down in Resident Evil, that's the best way of describing what they're going for. Um, and I had said that, and then now I'm actually hearing like political analysts and things talk about how the corporations have taken control of government and taken control of banks and taken control of all of those various systems that, so if you used to think of corporations would have been like below militaries and banks and religious organizations and secret societies and all of that on the pyramid, now they're above it, right? So that's the physical representation in our world of the changing of the guard.
and then when you think of umbrella too, you think of, you know, umbrella being at the top and it's kind of over everything.
Yeah.
And it's shielding everything. So everything else is underneath it.
Yeah, so the Umbrella Corporation in the fictional world of Resident Evil is a corporation that became so powerful that they actually did, they were the biggest producers of military weapons and sciences and space and medicine and education and everything, right? So it was literally like one corporation that took over the world, more or less, where everything was it's basically what was that, communism, where we had like one brand of everything and everything was umbrella. So that concept is why I borrowed their name, because that's more or less what we're watching happen.
What do you think about the people that are, because we always have like a doomsday thing, right? There's always people in the community that are talking about the most recent one that I watched. There's a bunch of people that are actually talking about it. September 24th or something like that of this year. There's supposed to be what they're saying, which I don't believe it, is some kind of blackout, some kind of internet. But they talked about that. They've been talking about that almost every single year. But it seems like people forget, right?
Yeah.
Like back in 2020. Well, I think it might have been 2000. Yeah, it was 2020, October of 2020. They were like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be super bad. Red October. Things are going to go down. It's going to be horrible." And all it turned out was that Trump got the bug. Like that was it. It's never as extravagant or as crazy as people talk about it. It's always like a tame version of it that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that they're talking about. So I always find it interesting. Every single year we have like the same kind of people talking about the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, October is going to be horrible. Into
Oh yeah.
September, everything's going to go down. There's going to be a huge blackout. Everything's going to crash. The stock market is going to go to zero. And it never happens. And then they do it the next year again, thinking that because people don't have a memory span to even think that they just did this exact same thing a year ago. They're talking about the exact same thing and it never happened.
It's been going back years now. There's like a 4 year cycle of Putin being our savior, and we're like right in the middle of that right now too. Right now, there's like, yeah, that's what he's doing. He's taking out the deep state. He's fighting back against the NWO. No, 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 no. But yeah, that is how it works, and that's how the CIA tells us that it works. And it's just funny that people don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's almost too obvious. I think it's like it's so in your face that they can't see it. They can't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how short of a memory span that we have, which I think that's been, they've been hitting us with information overload for the past 10 years, right? The news and the media outlets, it's just one story after another story after another story. So nothing is cemented into the consciousness, and unless it's something really dramatic, like a mass murder or something like that. You know what I mean? Then it's like 24/7, but everything else is just like little snippets of little segments of stories, so that we get confused, and then they just repeat the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, and in the mainstream world, we see how it's wrapped around election cycles, right? Why do you seem to think that our alternative media isn't also being manipulated in the same way, right? So let's call 2021 the year of Tartaria. So my prediction is that in either 2023 or 2025, we're going to have another version of Tartaria, but it's going to be the same thing, just repackaged a few years later, give people time to forget, right? And then we'll redo it. Flat Earth has a cycle just like that too, where it'll like be big, everyone will be talking about it, and then it'll dip off for a while. Everyone will call it absurd, and it'll come back, and then all of a sudden, Flat Earth is being talked about again, and then it'll dip off of it, and it's the same thing. And we see this in the mainstream, and we all point to it, but we just don't like looking in the mirror and realize that we actually do it within our own alternative version of the media as well, or at least it happens, right? So yeah.
So, what was your prediction? Do you think that that's actually going to happen in
No,
2023
no,
or
I just
2025?
talking about within our
Right,
community.
right,
Like
yeah.
the same thing as like around the time I was writing the blog, there was a round of the Putin being the savior thing going on then too,
Yeah.
right? So if you talk like 4 years, 8 years now, right? So it's yeah, it's just the way things cycle. It's normal.
I don't understand how people think that anything is going to get better. We've seen no evidence of anything getting better ever. I don't, since my lifetime, which I'm not, too old, I'm 29, but I don't remember one thing in my entire lifetime that's actually been collectively good. There's
It's
been
funny, like
nothing.
900 people on Project Camelot making predictions about how they've saved the world, and yet here we are. You know what I mean? Here we are. Keep telling me how. Yeah, okay. Um, we're here. We are. Right.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, and you're right. It's like a cycle. Like every 6 months we have these new people that kind of pop up in the community and tell us that everything's going to be good and everything's great, and the white hats are in control, and we're going to live in a golden age of humanity, and then they drop off whenever it doesn't happen, and then a new set of people rise up from that, and then they talking about the exact same things.
Yeah.
And people are buying it hook, line, and sinker, when there's absolutely no evidence that I've seen personally that things are going to be okay.
And here I am putting people off to show them that things are clearly not okay. And it doesn't matter how much of this opium you smoke, it's still just Mulder wanting to believe, which is exactly the program you guys are running in your head. It's savior programming and it's textbook. And just because you're talking about space aliens instead of Jesus Christ, it's no different. It's religious fervor.
Do you think that that's really where it started from? Was the religions making us look outside of ourselves for a savior, and then they've just copied that onto real things in our reality, always looking for, the president to save us or someone to come in so that we don't do anything about it
I wouldn't say
ourselves?
that's where it started, but that's definitely what's happening. It's the same dynamic, right? It's the same thing as celebrity worship. It's the same thing as like any type of worship, really. And yeah, it's that same dynamic of, everything good's out there and you have no power over it, right?
Yeah, it's I don't really understand or know how we could even begin to fix the reality that we've created without and this isn't me, being pessimistic or anything. I just don't really see a way out. It's gone too far. They've taken it way too far to where I don't know if there's anything that we can do, because it seems like they have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to the letter Z. And no matter
Choices,
what happens, is they get their way. I don't know.
choice has been collectively made. It's where we are watching it play out. It's not within our control. It's right now where we're casting our vote by how we adapt to it. That's how evolution works. Now it's a period of evolution. That's not time to make a bunch of choices of how the next evolution is going to work, right? That's time for you to live through it, and that's where we're at. So once again, the more we're looking out there for some type of savior, the less we're doing the work in here, right? Or in here that matters and will actually have an effect. And that's why we are on the path we're on, was because we were too busy looking up there, whether it was for God or the Anunnaki or the secret space program, blue avians or sphere beings or whatever, to come down and save us, or some whistleblower on the internet to have the right meeting at the right time with Donald Trump so that Donald Trump will, drain the fucking swamp. But I mean, yeah, they're called stand down programs, and that's exactly what they make people do, is stand down. No, you gotta do the work, and if you don't do the work, then they win, and they do the work, and that's why they win. So here we are.
Wait. So you're saying you didn't get your briefing with Donald Trump, Shane?
Well, no. I mean, I did accurately predict him being president years before he even announced that he was going to run. But yeah, I don't have secret meetings with him after murdering 19 assassins to get myself there.
It's crazy, bro. It's wackadoo. So many wackadoos, dude, and they keep recycling the exact same information over and over and over again, and they think that no one's going to notice, and they don't ever really get called out on it. I mean, some do get called out, and that's what I really liked about you and your show and what you were doing, and your blogs and everything, because you're just telling it how it is. You know what I mean? And that's very honorable and respectable in my book, brother. So thanks so much for coming back on my show, Shane. I really appreciate you, my friend. Let people know where they can find you on the interwebs.
Just to the beginning of the link tree URL, after the slash, Shane with a capital S, underscore Sedore with a capital S, and you'll find all my links there.
Awesome. All of Shane's information will be in the description of this video. I really enjoyed the conversation, brother. Appreciate you for coming back on. And for everyone else, thanks for watching and listening. Much love to everyone in the chat. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button, help the channel out in the YouTube algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. Link to my channel on Rokfin is in the description. Sign up over there, hit the follow button for my premium content. You can catch this episode and any of my other episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Google Podcasts, and download them directly to your device for free on Spreaker.com. And remember, we're not only in a spiritual war, but a war on humanity. Stay aware, stay alert, keep loving your heart for everyone, stay safe out there, and if you can see through the illusion, you are the solution. See you guys next time.